Hello everybody, it's Brian for GadgetUnit.com, and today I'll be reviewing the LG Optimus L9, which runs on T-Mobile here in the US. If you're interested in picking this phone up, it'll run you $48.99 up front with $8 per month for 24 months. If you don't mind paying full price for the phone though, it'll cost you $240.99. So one thing to keep in mind is that this is a mid-range device based off of today's high-end smartphone standards. So in terms of specs, it has a 1 GHz dual-core processor with 1 GB of RAM. The display is 4.5 inches QHD with Gorilla Glass 2. Now the resolution of the display is actually 960 by 540, so in terms of pixel density, it's not too high, so text won't be as crisp as, let's say, an HTC One or an iPhone 5, but it's still pretty good and it offers excellent viewing angles. There are two cameras on this phone, a 5 megapixel rear-facing camera with flash that can record 1080p video. The front-facing camera is VGA resolution, so that's probably only going to be good for small self-portraits for the internet, basically. For storage, it has 4 GB of internal storage. You can expand that up to 32 GB via a micro SD card, and that's probably what you're going to want to do depending on the type of applications that you plan on installing onto your device. So once I got sort of the base apps installed, like social networking apps, shopping apps, things like that, once I started moving on to the games, that's where space started to dwindle down quite a bit. So you definitely will probably want to invest in a micro SD card. Probably 16 GB should be plenty for most people. It has a 2150 milliamp hour battery, and I might as well just cover the battery now. And simply put, it's really good. I can easily go through the entire day with moderate to heavy usage, constantly on 4G, because since this has unlimited data, I never even had to go to Wi-Fi for anything since, unlimited data, why would you ever need Wi-Fi? I'll talk a little bit more about network performance towards the end of this video as well, but battery life is really good with a 2150 milliamp hour battery. It's easily able to last most of the day. Lastly, for the software, it runs Android 4.0.4 Ice Cream Sandwich with no real word on whether or not it will get Android 4.1 or 4.2 Jelly Bean anytime soon. So now I'm actually going to be doing stuff in the video with my hands and the phone. So in terms of design, starting with the back, it has sort of a soft touch rubberized coating to it, which helps greatly in terms of grip, and it also greatly reduces fingerprints and scratches. So this is one less thing that you actually have to worry about whenever you clean your devices. Also on the back is our 5 megapixel rear-facing camera with flash, some LG branding, and here in the lower left we have the opening for the speaker. Now regarding the speaker, it's plenty loud, but it's not really the clearest thing around, so at high volumes it could actually get distorted pretty easily, and it's not really pleasant to listen to for anything other than phone calls, so for music, movies, you'll probably want to get headphones. At the bottom of the phone, we do have the micro USB port for charging and syncing. There's also a bottom microphone. If we go over to the top, that's where we have another microphone for noise cancellation. We have a 3.5mm headset jack. On the left side, we have our volume rocker. And on the right side, we have our power button. There's no dedicated camera button here, which is a bit of a disappointment. To me, that feature should be standard on all smartphones because it makes taking photos and videos much more convenient. Here's the front of the phone. At the top we do have our earpiece, the front-facing camera, some sensors, T-Mobile and LG branding, our 4.5-inch QHD display, and at the bottom we have a home button and two capacitive touch buttons, one for back and one for menu. So to wrap up the design, it's not really that bad. I like the back a lot. It's rounded on the edges, so it should feel more comfortable to hold in your hand. The design of the front of the phone is pretty generic and plain looking. There's not really too much going on in terms of design for this phone. But like I said earlier, this is a mid-range device, so you must keep that in mind when judging this device. Now let's turn on the phone and take a look at the software. So this runs a skinned version of Android 4.0.4, so LG has a lot of stuff going on here. First, I'm going to talk about bloatware, because with Android phones, carriers preload plenty of applications to make you wish you could root your phone or install a custom ROM. T-Mobile has about 7 or 8 applications installed, most of which you are able to disable, but if I was using this phone as a personal device, I would probably go find as stock of a ROM as I could and install that onto here. But some of the included T-Mobile applications include 411 and More, GameBase, More for Me, Smartphone Mobile Hotspots, SmartShare, T-Mobile My Account, T-Mobile Name ID, T-Mobile TV, Visual Voicemail. So there are a number of applications that come preloaded on the device that make you want to disable them. And like I said, some of them you can, some of them you can't. Since we're talking about the software, let me go ahead and give you a quick tour of my setup. So here's my lock screen. It's very simple. I'm using one of the included stock wallpapers. I have the calendar widget here. It tells you your carrier right here. I have a couple of quick shortcuts for the camera and the camcorder. So if I tap and hold on this and slide up, it will, at least it's supposed to, go to the camera application, and there it goes. That right there was also a bit of a speed test because you could see that it took about 2 or 3 seconds for the camera application to open. So under mission critical moments where there's something that you really want to take a picture of quickly, you might miss it with this phone. So keep that in mind. It's not the fastest phone around, but it's certainly not the slowest phone. And I mean that with a lot of respect to the device itself. Opening applications is not that bad, so there was settings that opened very quickly. Calculator, the memo app. So in terms of loading apps, it's not too bad. When you get into gaming though, or resource-intensive apps, that's when things will start to slow down and you'll be able to notice that slower processor a little bit more. But once they do load, they do perform quite well. In terms of very demanding games, such as Real Racing 3, you'll probably want to bring down the graphics settings in games that allow you to do that so that you can get a really good frame rate. I feel as though the 1 GB of RAM on this phone is plenty. I mean, I don't really know how much is free right now, but I've never had any issues where web pages, or excuse me, my web browser where I had multiple tabs open, it would have to reload those tabs once I switched back to them. I've never had apps close because there isn't enough memory available. In terms of performance, it's actually pretty good for being a 1 GHz dual-core processor and not a fancy 1.5 GHz quad-core. So back to my setup, I kind of got caught off guard with the performance a little bit. I showed you my lock screen, and here is my home page. I'm only using one page because to me that feels... I think that one page is the most organized. Come on, folder. There we go. There we go. So you can add multiple home screens with different things on it. You can customize them with different app shortcuts or widgets. As you can see here, I have the weather widget and 4 folders. All of the apps that I have in these folders are pretty much all of the apps that I ever need. If I go over to all apps though, you can see so many more. 80% of these I don't need. So I've put all of the ones that I might want to open into folders. As you can see here, very organized. So I have a stock folder, which doesn't want to open for some reason. Let's go ahead and relaunch the home page here. So I don't know what's happening. I've been using this phone for a few weeks and this has never happened to me. So I can't really open these folders for some reason. But I guess we have to move on. Let me talk about network performance. It's actually pretty good. Now here in San Antonio, T-Mobile's performance is pretty good. Let me go over to the results tab in the speed test app. I've done over 70 speed tests throughout the entire city at various locations, outdoors, indoors. And for the most part, I would say that on average, my speeds were about, on average, 6 megabits per second down and about a megabit and a half up. Some of these tests had ridiculously high pings, which aren't really representative of real-world results or usage. So when you're web browsing or, you know, sending instant messages or something, these high pings aren't really relevant. I think that my highest speed test was 13 so about 13.5 megabits down and almost 3 up. So supposedly San Antonio has up to 42 megabits per second. This phone didn't come anywhere close to that, so these are pretty much T-Mobile's standard HSPA plus speeds, but they're actually really good. They're nothing like LTE, but they're definitely reliable for internet streaming, downloading apps quickly, and considering you have unlimited data, you never have to worry about going over your data usage or throttling or anything like that. So that's definitely one of the many perks of using T-Mobile. In terms of call quality and text messaging performance, all of that was just fine. No issues on those fronts. But I've been pretty satisfied with the speed tests. Now, of course, I've sort of been spoiled by AT&T's pretty fast 4G LTE here, and the speed test app just crashed, so whatever. Very quickly, I would like to talk about the camera. Now, when taking photos indoors or in areas with low light, it's not going to do that well of a job. When you're going outdoors, though, it does help quite a bit because of all of the natural light. In terms of color saturation and accuracy, the camera leaves a lot to be desired. As I mentioned earlier, it's a mid-range phone, so that's one thing to keep in mind. When doing videos, one thing that really annoyed me is that you can't tap on the screen to have it manually focus on a new object. So if you were to manually move closer to something, physically closer to an object, it would take the phone quite a while before it would actually focus on it, which is a bit disappointing. You are able, however, to take a sort of still image of the particular frame in a video while you are recording it, so it just saves that as a JPEG image. And as I mentioned earlier, you are able to record 1080p videos. To wrap things up, the LG Optimus L9 for T-Mobile is a pretty darn good phone. It can last you all day in terms of battery life. Its performance is plenty good for most people. The camera, however, is probably the device's weakest point, but for most people, it'll be just fine. The display, it's not too high of a resolution, but as I said, for most people, it'll be just fine. It's not as crisp or clear for the text, but the viewing angles are pretty darn good. If you're looking to save some money on a smartphone and you don't want to pay, over the course of 2 years, of course, $500 to $600 on a device, this is a very good option for you. You'll be very happy with it. Although, if I were to use this as my personal device, I would probably install a stock ROM like CyanogenMod or AOKP or whatever is available for this device, just so that I don't have to deal with all of these unneeded applications that I will never have to open or use. But that's it with this video. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback about this or anything else, feel free to leave those down below in the comments area. But that is it with this video, so thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you all very soon.